Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She's the author of several books, and of course, In the Fire, no other than Miss Phyllis Leavitt.
Well, hi, Daniel, and thank you so much for having me here with you.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Phyllis. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, I've been a psychotherapist for well over 30 years, but I've also been on a spiritual journey for most of my life. And those two worlds have really intersected. So, my first two books, A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire, really focus on what happened to me in my early life, the trauma that I had in my early life, and how that kind of put me on a path of being a seeker of some kind of healing. And I explored both the world of spiritual connection, which is really not so much about religion, but really about um, going within and finding the source of divine connection within myself. And then I did a lot of psychotherapy and did a lot of healing in that realm and became a psychotherapist. So my work really combines those two worlds.
Amazing, Miss Phyllis, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. And we are looking for more and more empowering books like this to come. So, what inspired you to write Into the Fire?
Yeah, what inspired me to write that was that when I began to really tap into hearing guidance from within about it was really about more than just my own life. It was about what are our souls doing here in human form? Why did we come here this way? And what is our purpose being human beings on the earth from a soul's point of view? And in the process, in those first two books, A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire, I really wanted to share with many more people than myself what I learned about how our ego consciousness is working and keeping us kind of confined to action and reaction in our ordinary lives and a lot of our unconscious behaviors. And what are the laws that govern that kind of consciousness that was called ego consciousness, which I think we can all relate to. It's like, how do our personalities react? What do we want? What is our conditioning? What is the outcome from a good conditioning? What's the outcome from a violent or abusive conditioning? Um, and I really wanted to share those messages because I felt so lost when I was young. I was in a lot of pain from early trauma, and I really didn't know why I was here. But I always had the feeling that there was something different inside of me that wanted to wake up and express itself in a more loving way in the world. So those first two books really focus on, how does our ego consciousness work? And a lot of that was about, um, how what are we playing out in the world we live in terms of dominating each other and suppressing each other, in terms of the great divide between men and women and the masculine and feminine energies, between and the issues around our personal will. Are we trying to overpower other people, or are we trying to cooperate with them? What are the issues around our heart, around love and hate? um, I'm sort of going through the chakras here because I got a lot of information about the chakra energies that I share and will be sharing more of in a future book. What is our throat chakra about? What did we come to communicate? What do we take in? What do we give out on an ordinary life level that either serves our health and well-being or further divides us and makes us feel separate and at odds with each other? Up here, what is the wisdom from the divine that's really trying to communicate itself to us? How do we use our minds in ordinary life? Um, what are all the issues that we've created as human beings around religion? And do our religions really reflect a relationship with a divinely loving source? Or do we manifest, some of our power and control and judgment issues through religion? Because basically, and I was sharing this with you, I think, briefly beforehand, that what I have found is that the world of spirit and the world of psychology are intimately connected because to the extent that we're unhealed in our emotional life, if we're operating out of our wounds or poor conditioning or very faulty role models, we bring that lens to our relationship to spirit. Um, and, when I was young, I was in a number of spiritual groups. They were all very good. I learned different meditation practices and I learned a lot about my unconsciousness in that realm. But I also saw people acting out their wounds on each other, climbing the hierarchical ladder of who's important and who's close to the guru and who knows best. And these are all emotional issues. They're not spiritual issues, but we bring them wherever we go. So in a nutshell, what I wanted to just say is that um, healing our personal wounds and our personal psyches is really the access to a much more healthy relationship to spirit and soul. My latest book is really mostly psychological. That book, America in Therapy, is really how do we bring that kind of healing to a country? How do we translate what helps us heal on an individual and family level? How do we bring that to the violence and the divisiveness and the discrimination and the injustice going on a national level? And how do we heal that rather than keep feeding our divides and our antagonism and hostilities?
So, Miss Phyllis, the title "Into the Fire" and "A Light in the Darkness" are powerful. What does it symbolize in the book or in the books?
I'm sorry, what's the question? What does what symbolize?
In the book, the title itself.
Oh, beautiful. I love that question. I love
Mm.
that question. So, A Light in the Darkness really came from, the title came from feeling lost in the darkness myself when I was young, because I had early childhood trauma that was so unhealed and had really colored my relationship with myself and the world around me. So, when I made a connection to a divinely loving and very wise source within myself, that felt like it lit up my darkness. And I wanted to share that light with a larger audience because it really changed my life dramatically. And then
Certainly.
the Into the Fire, that title really came from um, and I think this is a really important thing. And I don't know if this is true for everyone, but I think it's true maybe for more people than we would imagine. And it was certainly true for me. And that is that when light comes, it actually lights up the darkness. So when I began to feel this divine presence within myself and hear these messages about how our ego consciousness functions and the ways that we hurt ourselves, the way we hurt other people, the way we act out of our unconscious wounds, and all of that, um, it really put me into a deep inquiry into what had happened to me. So it wasn't, there was no bypass. I didn't just fly off to a heavenly nirvana place. I was really given a deep lens into, and I call that walking in the fire, of like the pain in my life. And one of the things that happened for me, and this happens for some people, it doesn't happen for everyone, but I began to have memories of past lives that were also very traumatic. And so I carried all of that like unresolved fire with me into this life. And it was all here to be resolved. And you don't have to believe in past lives or even explore past lives, because one of the things that I learned is that our inner child in this life holds all those patterns. So if you work on your own wounding in this life, if you walk into that fire and you're willing to walk through it and come out the other side, and not only see necessarily some of the things that might have happened to you that were painful or that colored your life in a dysfunctional way, but also maybe some of the things you've done that aren't so great out of your own pain or out of your own poor conditioning, that that's all fire, to like look honestly into the face of your humanness, of your fallibility, of your imperfection, and still find that divine love and still carve out of that what's your life path? What are we here for? And so one of the things that became really clear to me in the first two books that I write, and which actually prompted my third book, America in Therapy, was what I discovered for myself, and this is different for different people for sure, is that my purpose was to have my voice and to share my experience. And whether it was spiritual experience or psychological experience, to share the things that had helped me heal on every level. So that became the meaning and purpose of a lot of my existence. And that all unraveled and unfolded from doing the healing work, both psychologically and spiritually, that I did and still do.
Definitely. Continuing producing empowering books, Miss Phyllis. So in your book, was there a particular scene into the fire that was especially emotional or difficult to write?
Mm, that's a good question. I'm pretty sure it's in this book. It's hard to remember what's in what book now, but I went on a camping trip with my family, and we were at a campground I don't remember what state we were in, but it's a beautiful campground. And my older son had just gotten his license, and he wanted to drive the car over to the camp host place and buy some firewood for our campground. And he accidentally drove over the sidewalk. He didn't do any damage. He just accidentally hit the curb and the tire went over the sidewalk. And the camp host came to our campsite and just started screaming at all of us, like screaming and threatening to kick us out of the campground. And we just all, and it was me and my kids and my sister and her husband and their kids, and we all just, and including my son, and we all just said, we're really sorry. We're really sorry. Um, and he just kept yelling and screaming and threatening. And all we said was, we're really sorry. What can we do? Is there anything we can do to apologize or make this better? And finally, because nobody fought with him, he just walked away. And that was the end of it. And I went into this horrible place inside myself where I just internalized the rage that he had directed at us. And, today I don't think I would do that, but I was very vulnerable at that time, and I was beside myself, and I couldn't talk to anybody, and I just couldn't do anything. I sat by myself alone in the tent. My family all went and made a campfire and talked and made dinner, and I was just sitting in the tent sobbing. Um, and what I realized was and then the next morning I got up and I just did more of this divine guidance. And I really got the message about how we persecute each other and the deep imprint of, of kind of our animal nature to conquer and um, you know, uh, what's the word, dominate and suppress and kill each other even for our survival. And that had colored many, many of my lifetimes, including my childhood, where I had really been very, very frightened, not necessarily threatened with death, but very frightened. Um, and it just opened up that whole understanding about the duality of domination and suppression that most of us live under in some way, some people more, more intensely than others. And I began to start to have some freedom about that. But, when I look back on it, I think, well, why couldn't I just go sit with my family and enjoy the campfire and talk about, a crazy campground host? Um, but it really just unraveled me. But what I will say is this, and I think this really relates to A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire, those titles, is that, that was a fire that I walked into. And I came out the other side, and I came out with greater wisdom, and I came out with greater freedom. I don't believe that if I was in a similar situation today, I would have the same reaction because I think I've healed some of that part of me. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, Miss Phyllis. So, what do you hope readers will feel or think after finishing Into the Fire?
Yeah, what I most hope is that readers will, gain from the wisdom that was shared with me, but even more so to know that we all have that in us. Like when a person really turns within and asks for guidance, I believe we can find it, that we don't have to turn to, and teachers are good, and spiritual teachers are good, and other kinds of teachers are good, and therapists are helpful. It's all helpful. But I think the real help helps us find our own inner teacher and guide. And so, what I would hope is that from reading my books, that people really get that they have that within them, and that any real healing practice is going to take them into themselves in a deep and really trusting and profound way. Um, and that's what happened for me. And I never would have imagined that would happen.
Very well said, Miss Phyllis. Very well said. Are there any hidden messages or symbols that attentive readers might notice into the fire?
Mm. Well, the symbol that's on the cover that you're showing there right now, I kind of did the fire, but the serpent symbol that I've used several times really was what I was shown was the symbol for the throat chakra, for having your voice, for communicating well with other people, and for nurturing ourselves. So that actually is a sacred symbol from ancient times. It's called the Ouroboros. But I didn't know that before I began to receive these messages. That symbol just appeared for me. And it's a very powerful one for me because it both symbolizes our interconnectedness, and I really believe that we really are all interconnected, but it also symbolizes that we're sort of eating ourselves up. We're digesting and transforming our ego experience into a more enlightened soul experience. So that's what that symbol means to me.
So, Miss Phyllis, do readers need to read the previous books in the Road Home series from the Reading into the Fire?
Well, I think it's really important to read A Light in the Darkness before you read Into the Fire, but you could read them separately because a lot of the information just stands on its own. But if you read A Light in the Darkness first, then the first part of that is just autobiographical, what my early life was like before I began to receive this divine guidance, and then what it was like once I received it. And then Into the Fire is a continuation of those messages and of my experience during that time. The book America in Therapy totally stands on its own. You don't have to read anything before getting that one.
Awesome. Interesting indeed, Miss Phyllis. So, can you tease anything about what's coming next in the
Well,
series?
yeah, my hope is to go back to the series, the Road Home series. I mean, I have ideas for a sequel to America in Therapy, but I also have an idea for another book that's more of a sequel to the Road Home series, which would be really focused on the chakras. Because understanding how my chakras work and how to meditate and work with them in a way that begins to clear out some of my wounding and some of the ego energies that have been running the show in my life, I really believe is valuable information for everybody. And what's really beautiful is one of the things that I learned about the chakras is how the chakra energies actually apply to us as a collective, to humanity, to different countries. What are the energies we're working with and working out and working through? And how can we participate in that so that not only are we healthier and more loving and more kind and more peaceful and more cooperative with one another, but how can we be that way as as communities and nations. And the way the chakra information was shared with me, it applies on all those levels, individually and collectively. So I'm really excited about writing that book.
Looking forward for that, Miss Phyllis. So, which character's growth are you most proud of Into the Fire?
Which character's growth?
Yes,
Well, it's really my growth because everybody it's autobiographical, so it's my growth. But what's exciting to me about it, as I said earlier, is that the things that I heard and the things that I learned, I feel are broadly applicable to anyone who's interested in being on a journey of recovering their true self and making a connection to their own soul or their own essence, however you say that.
definitely interesting, Miss Phyllis. So, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, and it's fifth season, people, fifth season with Chef Alessandro, one of the special chef in one of five-star hotel in downtown Toronto. Please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letters senders all over the world. So please do listen Food 101 wherever you listen your podcast. So Miss Phyllis, if you could describe Into the Fire in just 3 words, what would they be?
That's a good question. Spirit is here to help us. We just have to ask for the help.
Yes, indeed. How about your other book, America in Therapy, if you describe in 3 adjectives?
Right. Um, Three adjectives: illuminating, hopeful, and personally applicable.
Definitely America in Therapy. How about your book, A Light in Darkness? If you describe in 3 adjectives, what are
Hmm.
they?
Um, Trauma, healing, and transformation.
Awesome, Miss Phyllis Leavitt. Thank you so much for sharing your books to the world, empowering books, and we are looking forward for more and more and more empowering books to come. So can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Please, and the best way to find me is on my website, which is my name, phyllisleavitt.com. And then I'm on all the social media, and my books are on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the major booksellers.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Phyllis Leavitt because if you support her, as I said, more and more empowering series to come. So, Miss Phyllis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure and an honor to talk with you. Thank you.
Welcome, people. See you soon.